Jesus don't cry. You can rely on me, honey. You can combine anything you want.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the AxPx podcast. I'm your host, Sean DeRager. With me, as always, Joey Avalos.
Hello, everyone.
And we do have a guest this week, Rob Hunter. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. This week's topic, and it's kind of brought up by Joey because I wanted to talk about Mormonism this week, but then the guest, it was his daughter's birthday this weekend. And of course, they don't do anything on Sundays. So Sunday was out of the question. So we're going to move that, to next week. And Joey brought up a topic, that he's been thinking about quite a bit, which is called, like, quote unquote, new atheism. And we'll get into that in a second. So I figured, I kind of threw out, the call on the Twitters and cause me and Joey's background are, if you've listened to the show before, are very much, we come from like a Christian background. We're very much in a place of searching right now. But of course, I wanted to have someone with an atheist background, and, Rob answered the call on Twitter. So thanks, man, for wanting to chat about that.
No worries. I want to talk about it, a lot more than I do end up getting a chance to, because a lot of people don't really want to engage in the kind of conversations, and so I don't get the experience that I'm after all the time. So I'm happy to be here.
You write for a couple like online movie blogs and websites, right? What's that?
I write for Film School Rejects. I'm one of the editors there, and I also write news and columns and such as well.
Very cool. And Film School Rejects is one of my favorite movie blogs. So
excellent.
Everyone add that to your I don't know, RSS.
Yeah, I have a treasure chest full of kudos.
All right. Well, yeah, Rob, the reason why of course I want to have you on the show is because you and I've noticed things on Twitter in the past where you kind of briefly go into things. So, I wanted to kind of get your, your journey. You can be as brief or as long as you want. Just your journey, it's kind of weird because atheism isn't necessarily like a religion. Like you can't, you know what I mean?
Right. It's a state of mind. It's a train of thought.
Yeah.
It is still a belief in the sense that, you're not believing in these other things in the various things that you've been taught, depending on the situation. But yeah, I was raised Catholic in a very, my dad was kind of on the outskirts of it, but the rest of us were raised with my mom to be, pretty hardcore Catholic. We, the church every Sunday, had the first communion, did all that jazz. I was in Catholic, grade school, Catholic high school. My grandparents on her side were extremely Catholic, very Catholic, and obviously had raised her that way. And then she kind of brought it over to us. So that was pretty much kind of a given. We would question, well, hey, why doesn't, dad go to church? And it was just kind of like, he chooses not to, and that was the end of it. There wasn't really any room for discussion about, well, he might not necessarily agree with it or believe in it or, care about it. It just was a fact. He just didn't go, and that was the end of it. But, the grandparents said were big into it. It was encouraged. My mother was big time into it. I mean, she was, she still is a great, wonderful woman, but she, through my childhood, was very strict and hardcore about it. It wasn't, like Carrie, anything like that, but it was still, pretty straightforward and pretty strict. And I never really thought about it. I mean, and I think, and I'll say this up front to you guys too. I mean, I know that you're going through your own things here, and I don't want to, I'll apologize in advance. I don't want to offend, obviously, either of you with anything I say, any kind of conclusions that I've reached.
No, quite all right, man. That's what this podcast is all about. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I think that, one of my big opinions on this whole thing is that I think that most people who are religious, and I'm generalizing obviously, but I'm going to go ahead and say most anyways, haven't really given serious thought to their beliefs. And I think that it's because people are raised. I mean, most folks who are raised to have a certain belief, whether it be religious or political or whatever, more often than not will stay with it because that's kind of what they're familiar with, what they know, their social, morals is what they're familiar with. And religion falls into that. And I think that most people don't really give it a thought. It becomes kind of a second hand, like, oh yeah, sure, I'm a Christian, or, I'm a Jew, or I'm a Mormon, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. You participate, you're active in it, but, you never really stop just on your own and do some research into it, give it some serious thought, give an open eye, an open mind to other views, other thoughts. You know what I mean? It's just kind of this is what I am, this is what I believe. And I think most people kind of get stuck in that rut.
Right.
And I definitely was. I mean, we were raised this way, and that was the beginning and the end of it for the most part. But the first thing for me, again, I was living the life, and that was just what was expected of me. But we went to church one Sunday, and we were on our way home, and I was riding in the back seat. My mom and my sister were up in the front, and partway through the ride home, I leaned forward in between the two front seats, and I pulled out the communion that I had kept and pocketed. I hadn't actually eaten it. Uh-huh. And I pulled it out, and I made a crack about, is it okay if I save this for after lunch? Because I'm kind of full right now. I was a kid, probably 13 or 14. My mom did not really appreciate this. She kind of pulled the car over, in a huff, gave me a bit of a very, very nasty look, a stern warning, and a quick little lecture. Strongly encouraged that I eat it right then and there. And it was kind of a bad experience. We made it home, and I was kind of, punished, sent to my room. And I was too young to really understand what was going on there. But that seed kind of got in there. The fact that, wait a minute, we all acknowledge this is not actually the body of Christ, right? We acknowledge this is a piece of unleavened bread. I made a joke, and now I'm being, treated like I killed somebody. And like I said, I didn't change my mind right then, but it kind of got into my head. And so as I'm going through high school, and we had, like I said, it was a Catholic school. Unsurprisingly, we had a brother, like a father, like a priest, but it's a brother, who was arrested for trying to pick up some little kids at gunpoint for nefarious purposes. And it was obviously a big shock and a big scare and all that kind of stuff. But it was also, for a lot of people, what I could see, kind of like, not really a surprise. And these are the kind of things that kind of added in, layered into my views on things. Mm-hmm. The way that the priests and the stuff and the nuns would treat the students, very strictly, it wasn't human. It wasn't even humane. It was just kind of like, you're here and you're under God's eye. And there's the regular life, but then there's this weird element to it. And so as I was probably approaching like around 17 or so, I actually reached a point where I just told my mom, I'm done with the, probably 16 or 17, that I'm done with the going to church. Mm-hmm. And, we had a big breakdown over it. My grandfather, her father, would usually give us money every Christmas. He gave me a card with money in it, but he came over to me and he handed me personally. I opened it, great, thanks. And he went and said to me, he says, you can keep that if you start going back to church again. And, I'm a kid. It's a teenager. It's a good, healthy amount of money. And it was tough, but I'm like, no. So that was my first little instance really of kind of standing the ground and taking a loss because of preferring that this is to stick by my own guns. Mm-hmm. And from there, I've just basically, I've never looked back, except for the fact that, like I said, as I was going through that, I mean, I did look into some different things. I read some books on it. I got more opinions on it. I wasn't, didn't become a scholar by any means, but yeah. I just really saw no compelling reason, for believing. The faith and the actual church experience are two separate things. Mm-hmm. And the church experience, I can kind of see a little bit of value too, with the social value and the social arrangements, something like that, as far as having a group of people that you can share time with and share experiences with. Like if you're new to a community, yeah. I understand that, but that's no different from any other club. But on the faith side of it, I started looking at it then, and I continue to this day, to think of anybody who, the folks who fully believe in it, I can still like them. I can still be friends with them and all that. But in all honesty, I cannot help but think a little bit less of somebody who believes these things, who claims to have given it serious thought. Right. If that makes sense. Because I don't understand how anybody, can give it serious thought, can look at various things and come to the conclusion that, a God, let alone a merciful God, exists, and created us and is watching over and has a plan and, heaven and all that kind of stuff. And then you can transpose that to pretty much any other religion with a God. Right. It's a logic issue for me, but it's also common sensing. And I think those two things are separate, and I think that they're both valid. And I don't see how somebody can give it that kind of thought, come to that conclusion, and claim to be at all rational. Yeah. So, all right. That's pretty much where I am now. I mean, I'm not like any kind of atheism terrorist. I don't go around pushing it in people's faces. I don't, get into arguments over it. I love discussing it though, because I love talking to people who do believe, to get their views and their stance on things and to see why they believe. And just, it's rare, but once in a while, it's not because they were raised that way, but more often than not, it's because they were raised that way. It's all they've known.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's pretty much it. I mean, so that's where I am right now. Cool. I currently do not believe any of that. I'm perfectly fine that, that you or somebody else does. But, the only time it becomes an issue for me is obviously when somebody's religious beliefs, are pushed on me as far as changing laws, whether it be like abortion laws or, marriage laws, stuff like that. If the core of your argument is because it's in the Bible or because the Bible says so, then you're automatically null and void, in my view.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Matt, for sharing that. Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So, you'll definitely have a chance to weigh in on this, conversation today as we dive a little bit further into it. Joey, did you want to go ahead and introduce, why you wanted to talk about this and, kind of take it from here?
Yeah, for sure, Sean. Yeah, I found it, when you and I first started talking, I guess, Sean and I have been friends, for a while. We used to, as some people know, we used to tour together. I was in a band. And, what were you doing that time? I always forget, Sean. What was your job really? Were you like a road manager or,
It was like a
everything.
It was like a glorified roadie, basically. Like, I think when I met you, I was, I don't think I was doing tour managing. Mm-hmm. I started doing tour managing, and then when I met you, I was like, stage managing. Like, stage manager was the title.
Right.
And basically glorified roadie. And I would do like videography for them. So they had a camera, and I was, just shooting the heck out of everything. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we reconnected, after all the many years of not talking to each other, or, I think, you and I were on the same page. We were really into, philosophy, different worldviews, not just questioning what we believe, but why do we believe the things we do? Almost like the social psychology of who we are, and, the new atheism, it was interesting at the same time, we were seeing this huge movement. We were talking about Sam Harris, a neurologist, and then you got Richard Dawkins, a biologist, and then you got Daniel Dennett, the philosopher, and the late Christopher Hitchens, a great, author, writer, and, advocates of this, what was quote unquote the new atheism. And I just found it fascinating because, I don't know about you, Sean, but growing up, if you heard the word atheist, almost came with a bad connotation, probably still does to some degree. Yeah. But I almost thought they worship Satan or, like there are these evil people that live in this tower and do immoral things, So I've always been fascinated in this world. I remember even feeling, there's this, documentary called The Atheism Tapes one time on Netflix. And I remember a couple of years ago, I watched them out of curiosity, but interesting thing was like within 5 minutes to watching, I had to turn it off because I almost felt guilty. Like I was doing something evil. No, not, and they weren't saying anything evil. I just was like, wow, I need to maybe, put this away and forgive myself for what I'm watching here. But right then I knew there was something wrong with that. Mm-hmm. There was something, that was not healthy. Whatever, how I saw the world was not healthy. And I, to this day, that's what I think what was curious. Not that I was looking to become an atheist I just found it fascinating because it seemed like it's becoming a movement again. And granted, atheism has always been a worldview that's been spoke throughout the generations beyond generations, but this new atheism seems like it's organized or it's trying to get organized, almost as some apologists, Christian apologists like to call it as, the church, a church of atheism, So I just found it fascinating. I thought it was very, relevant to, especially just having elections, with a lot of key issues and, seeing these rallies pop up, the freedom of religion, Skepticon. I mean, there's a list of these new atheists getting together and actually almost putting a unified voice together. So I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about it and get a perspective from someone that, claims being an atheist, what they think about this new atheism since, I think that's kind of what sparked it. I don't know. Correct us wrong, Rob. Did you know what new atheists or atheism meant before we spoke with you for this podcast?
Yeah, I was familiar with the term, and I was familiar with the idea of the movement. I don't fully, like, I don't know the origins of the term as far as like who actually started propagating the idea. It seems to me that the main core behind it is that it's kind of an aggressive atheism, as opposed to like a passive one where you're going to sit back and, I'll be over here in my corner where I don't believe. This new form of it seemed to be more about bringing it to the believers and bringing it to the masses, which seemed to be the kind of like the core of what I view as the new atheism.
Right. And I think, just to interject real quick, Sean, with the new atheism, I noticed that they basically say that it's time to stop giving religion respect, where you would just let it go, and say, let them believe what they want to believe and I'll believe what I want to believe. To the point now, it's like, no, they deserve the same respect that any other worldview, to allow, criticism, to be under the microscope and to be, talked about without having this notion that it's off limits.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned the elections too, because I do think that, the idea of an atheist president it's not going to happen anytime soon. And it definitely won't happen anytime before, we get a woman president or, again, a Mormon president or something like that. I think atheist is still, to reference what you said earlier, is still kind of a dirty word for a lot of people. Even if you don't reach the point of thinking it's, necessarily satanic or dark, to a lot of people, that absence, which all it really is the absence of a belief in a God, but a lot of people attribute it with a lot bigger absence. And so I just don't see, even at any level, I don't see any of the politicians coming out and saying, I'm an atheist, and guess what? That's okay. It's still a taboo issue for them.
Yeah. And I was looking at some stuff today, and it seems to be more of a prevalent thing, like in the U.S., the demonization of atheists seems to be more of a U.S. trait. Because I know that over in Europe and everything like that, it's almost not, they don't have to be as aggressive. It's almost like the aggression is happening here towards the U.S. kind of evangelical movement, just because it's not in Europe. It's really, I don't think it's really that big of a deal. I mean, I know there's the Church of England, which is big over there, but it's still very much a secular, it seems to be more of a secular nation, more open to atheism.
Yeah, the UK in particular is very open to atheism, and they've got a lot of politicians who, it doesn't even become an issue for them, which I think is the ideal. Right. Because this shouldn't be an issue, because this is something that really is, and what it should be is a private issue between you and your, belief, whatever it might be. Unless obviously that belief is that, if I get in control of a nuclear, button, I'm going to press it. But if it's strictly a faith-based thing or religious-based thing, I shouldn't have to know about it. Right. You know what I mean? And I think that's where the UK is now with their politicians, that they don't even really discuss, you don't see the politicians signing off with God bless the UK. The Queen does, but the politicians don't.
Yeah. Well, let's go and take a quick, musical break here, and we'll come back here and we'll unpack, the quote unquote new atheism a little bit more. So hang out just for a little bit here. The first, band I'm going to play for you today, they're from Denver, Colorado. They're called Tin Horn Prayer, and the song I'm going to play for you is called 1939. It's from the album Get Busy Dying on Bermuda Mohawk Productions, and it's out now. You can go to tinhornprayer.bandcamp.com to download the album. We'll be back right after this. This is Tin Horn Prayer on the AxPx podcast. And that was Tin Horn Prayer with the song 1939. Their album's called Get Busy Dying, and you can get it right now. Go to their Bandcamp websites, tinhornprayer.bandcamp.com, and grab that there. Very good band. I really, really dig them a lot. All right, so we're back talking about new atheism. With co-host, of course, Joey Avalos, and then we have Rob Hunter is our guest today. He's the token atheist of the show. It's
a position I'm familiar with.
I always hate, I'm one that always hates, throwing labels on people. So, I mean this with all, very much tongue in cheek, Rob.
Well, I think it's an interesting, transition, because I wanted to ask Rob if he thinks it's necessary that we even have the term atheist. As the people say, people that don't believe in unicorns, we don't call them, a unicornist. Or, that don't believe in Santa, so on, so on. If you think the word is even necessary, or we should just get rid of it, especially for atheists nowadays,
Ideal situation, you wouldn't have to have the word, but I mean, it is a world where, everything has to have a label, everything has to have be able to be broken down into one or two words, soundbite or whatever. And so, I don't mind it. I don't walk around identifying myself as that, but if and when it comes up, I really even use the word. I usually will say, well, no, I don't buy into that gobbledygook or that fantasy. I'll try and say that this is what I am. And then more often than not, if I think the person's up to it, I'll try and throw in a little jab. But, I don't mind the term. It exists, and it should be succinct. It should be, kind of, complete as far as what it tells you. Like if you're an atheist, boom, that should be the end of it. The problem though is, to your point earlier, that it does come with a lot of baggage, that gets tacked on by opponents and by believers and other things that they kind of, and I'm sure, it works the other direction too. I'm sure some atheists will do the same thing and, pack baggage onto the term Mormon or Christian or whatever. But the difference is that usually that baggage comes from the sense of this is the religion you subscribe to. This is what you say you believe in. Whereas the atheist it's straightforward. Boom. I don't believe in any of that. That's the end of it. There's nothing more to it. I don't believe, like, when you die, you're dead. That's the end of it. And that's fine. That's wonderful. Guess what? That means you should live this life as if it is your last, because it is your last. And so that to me is a much stronger message than anything that says, well, live this life. And then guess what? You get, awesome heaven with all your friends and family or virgins or whatever, belief you have. I think it's a lot more relevant and a lot more, it's just a lot better to be told, This is it. So make the most of it. Do what you can here and now.
Well, let's go ahead and unpack New Atheism a little bit. I have some sound clips here, and I wanted to talk about, because there's kind of a group of guys that are kind of associated with the New Atheism term. And Joe, you sent me some information over here. So it says here that the term is commonly associated with individuals such as Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens. And I guess together, I don't know where this comes from, but they're called the Four Horsemen of New Atheism, based off of
they've done a few shows or presentations where the four of them get together and talk about it.
Okay, so this guy is basically the term. I think New Atheism, it looks like, got to start after a 2007 debate. They held on their criticisms of religion, and the name, I guess, stuck from there on. So I have a few clips here. I don't have anything from Daniel Dennett. But I do have stuff from Dawkins and everything. Let's go ahead and I'm going to play a few clips here. This is Richard Dawkins kind of summing up, his beliefs here. Make sure it's not too loud here.
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. A petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, malevolent bully.
So that's Richard Dawkins.
He doesn't mince words.
Yeah, tell us how you really feel, Richard.
And that's the thing that this New Atheism kind of term, because it's very much a lot of the criticism towards, especially Christianity, is very biting. They're very biting in their criticisms of Christianity, especially. So that's kind of I think seems to be the connective tissue between these guys here.
I think it's legitimate, though. I mean, it's easy too, because a lot of times Christians will, put a distinction, a marker between the Old and New Testament, and they seem to be a lot more forgiving of the Old by saying, "Oh, well, that's whatever. What's important is the New with Christ and all that." And even if you accept that, you still have this huge chunk. Again, providing you believe, what happened in the Bible, and you believe that it was the Word of God and such. You still have this huge chunk. Even if Christ came after that, you still have this huge chunk of time where terrible, terrible things were done, not just in the name of God, which is what we have going on now, but actually by God. I mean, horrendous things. And to just kind of swipe it under the rug because, oh, look, Christ is here now, and now we've got some new rules to go by. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. As an aside here, I think, our listeners, I listened to a podcast called The Thinking Atheist and the host is Seth Andrews. And he just did an episode on, the Bible called, I think it's called Bloody Bible. And, I highly recommend it. Even if you're a Christian or whatever, I think I think these are legitimate arguments, and it's a very, very good podcast. So I'm gonna just kind of throw that little plug out there. It's thethinkingatheist.com, and then you can find his podcast. But yeah, to that point, like, because that's kind of a strong backbone too. A lot of people like, and this is why this the host here, Seth Andrews, why he left the Christian faith, and he was a Christian radio DJ in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was like in it, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he left because of the Old Testament and a lot of things leading him. He started studying the Bible for himself, and that was a big reason why he fell away from it, because he just couldn't get behind everything. And it's a very good podcast. I highly recommend you guys anyone check it out, because it'll kind of accent what we're talking about here with the Bible, because there's some crazy things in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament. A lot of people glide over things in the New Testament. Let's move down the line here. Let's see. Here's Sam Harris. I got a couple from him.
The usefulness of religion, the fact that it gives life meaning, that it makes people feel good, is not an argument for the truth of any religious doctrine. Faith really is the license that reasonable people give one another to keep believing when reasons fail.
And then here's one more, where Sam Harris is talking about morality.
Sam Harris thinks otherwise.
If religion were really the only durable foundation for morality, you would expect atheists to be really badly behaved. You would go to a group like the National Academy of Sciences, and these are our most elite scientists, 93% of whom reject the idea of God. You would expect these guys to be raping and killing and lying and stealing with abandon.
So there he brings up the morality issue.
That's an insulting one. When people, I've had that discussion before, and people
Right.
will say that you have to get your morality from the Bible. That's for a fact where it comes from. And if you don't have that, if you don't subscribe to that argument, then just like Harris just said, I mean, then what's to keep you from running out there and killing willy-nilly left and right?
Yeah.
And it's insulting, and it's so simplistic, and there's not much I want to say back to them. I just want to tell them, just how about you just listen to what you just said? I mean, it's a moronic argument to have.
Joe, do you have anything to bring up about Sam Harris right now, or I mean, we can always?
Well, yeah, it kind of ties in with why I asked if he thought the word atheist was necessary. I watched a recent lecture by Sam Harris at I think an American Atheist Convention, where he went in there to the Lion's Den and said, "Hey, I think we need to get rid of this word. I think it's unnecessary,
Okay.
and I actually think it's doing more harm to pushing the main issues." Which I think it's interesting when he brings main issues, because really, if you boil it down, it's and that's another thing too. I hear a lot of disagreement what atheism really means. How do you define it? There's a lot of different ways of defining atheism. And I think a lot of people think that it's more of an arrogant approach, and correct me wrong, Rob, is that you know for a fact that God does not exist.
I've had that put in my face before too. And I don't see how it differs from somebody who has faith, who will say that they know that God exists and that they know God is watching over them. To me, it's the same thing. I mean, can I prove it? No. I mean, the opposite side can't be proven either. But I mean, I know that it's the case. I mean, it's not something that I give any kind of percentage chance of being wrong on. I could be proven wrong at some point, but it won't be to any of you. It'll be to me if that's the case. But yeah, I don't. It's no different. I mean, this is what I believe. This is what I know. And if I believe something, then I should know it. The word should be, interchangeable when it comes to this kind of thing.
And then, all right, I got one more clip. I wish I had Daniel Dennett. I'm kicking myself here, but here's I have a couple here from Christopher Hitchens, and it's really a huge shame. I think it's a huge loss that he passed, and because he was such
Hitchens, I agree.
Interesting voice and very entertaining. Like, that's the thing about him. He's very hard-nosed, but always entertaining. And here's a couple clips from Christopher Hitchens.
Now, I am absolutely convinced that the main source of hatred in the world is religion and organized religion. Absolutely convinced of it. And I think it should be religion treated with ridicule, and hatred and contempt. And I claim that right.
And then here's one more from Christopher Hitchens.
Not scorning the three delightful children who result, who are everything to me and who are my only chance of even a glimpse of a second life, let alone an immortal one. And I'll tell you something, if I was told to sacrifice them to prove my devotion to God, if I was told to do what all monotheists are told to do, and admire the man who said, yes, I'll gut my kid to show my love of God, I'd say, no, fuck you. Not scorning.
So that's Christopher Hitchens.
He claims to be more of an anti-theist than even an atheist. You know?
That's what I meant by the aggressive comment earlier. That I think that what I do see from them, like I said, it's a lot more proactive and a lot more in the face of the established religions, because they themselves are a part of the establishment. I mean, you look at our money, you look at the Constitution, you look at all this kind of stuff. The government itself, the fact that our Congress, does a prayer. It's stuff that, stuff that doesn't really bother me, to for the most part. I mean, I can go on living knowing that, my money says in God we trust, but these are the kind of things, because they are accepted to be part of the norm, that I see where he's coming from, the argument that, okay, we need to kind of just nip this in the bud and say, boom, it's over with this. Let's end this. Let's separate this. Because, if you don't believe in that kind of stuff, whether it be the Christian God or whatever, Christ, it is, you can't deny that it's a silly thing. If you don't believe that kind of thing, I mean, it's just a pure fantasy, a pure, a magical little tale. And so when you're faced with people that you otherwise respect and otherwise get along with, who have this belief, it is it can easily become kind of a divisive thing. And so if we were to eliminate, that kind of thing from rational society, I don't think it would be a bad thing.
I have some clips from apologists that we can get into later. That'll be some good stuff to get into here. Joey, can you tell me a little bit about Daniel Dennett? I mean, he's the one out of these four that I'm not, in everything that I've listened to, surprisingly, I haven't, stumbled across anything from Daniel Dennett.
Yeah, Daniel Dennett is the token philosopher out of all of them. He, wrote a best seller called Breaking the Spell, Religion as a Natural Phenomenon. And he really holds, what's interesting is, compared to all these four, they have a unified idea that God does not exist or do not believe in God. But the funny thing about it doesn't mean that they agree on everything, though. Uh-huh. Sam Harris just wrote a book called Free Will, and about the illusion of having free will from a neurological standpoint. And Daniel Dennett, from a philosophical point, he wrote a book about free will and how it does exist. So they don't agree on those terms either. But with Daniel Dennett, he comes from more a philosophical mindset of the personal God. Mm-hmm. From what I've read, that the personal God, that's the one in the Bible and in Islam and what have you, does not exist. It's a lot easier to convince someone of a deity per se, because you can put whatever attributes you want to a God that creates, as some of the forefathers believed. The deist mentality is a lot easier to explain, but the personal God seems frivolous.
Do you guys want to jump into talking about these apologists? Cause to combat atheism, of course, a lot of the evangelicals, kind of have schools in, becoming an apologist. Which is funny because the term apologist is funny, because I always use apologist like Rob say, like for movies, like, I say that I'm a Michael Bay apologist.
Like it fits here as well.
Well, so it's just funny, the term that's adopted as an apologist, because if you're a Christian, you're not supposed to be apologizing for your faith, right? It's just a funny term.
You're basically saying, I know it sounds goofy and it makes no sense,
but. Yeah. Here's a clip from, it's William Dean Craig. Did I get his name right, Joey?
William Lane
Craig. There we are. Okay. And this is basically him kind of talking about what he thinks of people like Richard Dawkins.
I would like to come back to an earlier point, if I may, too, and that is the notion that atheists are somehow the intelligentsia among us and so forth. I think this is just completely false. The spate of new books published by the new atheists like Harris and Hitchens and Dawkins and so forth are not sophisticated books intellectually. These are, for the most part, angry, bitter diatribes against religion. And while someone like Dawkins may be a good scientist in his field, when he begins to talk about philosophy and theology, he is merely a layman. And The God Delusion is a very unsophisticated book intellectually. As a philosopher, I was just appalled at the arguments he gives in that book. It is an embarrassment, really, I think. There is also...
So that's William Lane Craig. And
I think he raises an interesting point. That, I mean, he's not what he meant, but as far as the intelligence factor goes, he's basically critiquing the book and saying it's not, eloquently written and the arguments aren't, profound or succinct, whatever he's trying to imply there. But the bigger picture is that I think if you did, I don't even think, I know this, if you did a study, if you did stats, if you did comparisons, the cultures and the people who have faith, who claim to have faith, who do believe in whatever God it might be, compared to those who don't, there is a sliding scale of intelligence and of education. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, necessarily dogging anybody. This is just a fact. I mean, the lower, educated groups, whether it be like, tribes, in some, foreign country, or even, people down in the South, and I'm not going to dog the South, but I mean, as far as the people where the education is lower, the faith factor is usually higher. Uh-huh. It's an undeniable, link there. And so make of that what you will, but I don't think that he, can really criticize and argue that the atheist movement isn't the intelligentsia. I mean, maybe he comes across as arrogant. Yeah. And if that's his point, fine. But the facts do sustain that, the folks who are on the faith side usually, more often than not, by an overwhelming margin, have a far lower education level than those on the other side. And
I would say these are kind of, I would attribute this to kind of blind faith, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many people that just take what their pastor has to say as the word, and they don't even, crack open the Bible. Or if they do, they take everything back to what their pastor is telling them. I mean,
the other thing too is they'll crack open the Bible just to find something to support their point. Yeah. But as I think Hitchens did a really good job of it, you can use the Bible to support pretty much any argument you have. You can find something in there that supports it, because it's a fantastically fun anthology of fiction. It's kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to look for actual morals and lessons in there, it's scattershot. I mean, you can't find just one strict thing. If you're gonna, you've got people that pull it out and say, oh well, the Bible tells me that homosexuality is wrong. Great. The Bible also tells you, that working on a Sunday is wrong and punishable by death, or growing your fields on a Saturday. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we can but they can choose what they want to grab and use to defend their argument.
I almost feel that talking about what the Bible says about sin is almost a whole other podcast, because it's just, we got into it on our Facebook page the other day, and man, oh man, yeah, I'd say that would be a whole other topic. I got one more from Craig here. I have a couple more about suffering. He talks about suffering. Very long-winded ones, but I got one more from him that's only about 20 seconds. So here's one more from William Lane Craig.
There has also been, especially over the last 50 years, since the late 1960s, a literal revolution in my discipline, philosophy, in the Anglo-American world, which has brought about a renaissance of Christian philosophy, such that some of our finest philosophers at our most prestigious universities are now outspoken Bible-believing Christians. If God,
what I don't have on here, because the clip would have got too long, but this audio clip's taken from like kind of a roundtable debate on a Christian television show. So you got one atheist in there against basically a Christian host and William Craig, and you hear like the banging on the table. That was the atheist guy kind of sitting back in his chair like, oh shit, and he follows it up with, where are you getting your information? And, I wanted to play the clip, but it just got too long. Them going back and forth. But, what do you think about that, Rob? 93% of scholars are now Bible believing Christians.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you can support that argument with a quote from the Bible, but it's obviously not accurate. And even to his point about philosophers in the last 40 years, whatever, are developing grand ideas and new thoughts. Even if that was the case, which I don't think that is, but even if it was the case, you're starting from, unlike, again, you just compare it to atheism, which is just a blank slate. We don't believe it. End of story. On the Christian side, you're starting from the Bible, which you have to, if you're going to be a believer, you've got to accept as the Word of God. Now, obviously, there's a schism between those who believe that every word is true and those who believe it's stories. And you can usually catch people, in that one too, because you'll find something in there they just can't quite commit to believing actually happened. But, either way, you've got to accept it as the core of your religion. And if that's the case, there's not a lot more you can do with it, philosophy-wise or thought-wise. This is the core. This is what it is. Anything else you're going to add to that is just you adding to it. You know what I mean? It's not, you're going to, at some point you're going against or above and beyond what supposedly is the core of your religion. So I don't think that, philosophers and everything, where are you going to go with it? You've got to basically say, okay, this is my religion. This is what I start with. Where else are you going to add to it? So I don't think there's a lot more thought that you can actually, expound on with it. It is what it is. And either you have to accept it or you don't.
Yeah. Joey, what are your thoughts on William Lane Craig? I find him to be very kind of full of himself a little bit. He feels like he's kind of the smartest guy in the room. What are your thoughts on him, Joey?
To preface, man, I was very disappointed I was in Tulsa a couple months ago, and I flew out on a Sunday, and he was actually at my friend's church that day. I didn't know. I would have stayed one day just to listen to him talk, for the mere fact because in some ways, I understand where he's coming from, but my complete view about apologists in the first place, I think they're unnecessary. I find William Lane Craig, and not to try to attack him as a person, but I find his way of doing things and listen to his interviews, he's a wordsmith. Yeah. He likes to use a lot of big words, and it sounds very intellectual and scholarly, but the layperson could not digest one word he's trying to say or make. It just seems like he's using words to his advantage to say something, but at the end of the day, I sometimes go, what did you say?
Yeah, he's a very eloquent person, but he's very eloquent at saying nothing, almost.
Yeah, and not to attack William Lane Craig, this show's not to attack anyone or where they, it's like one-sided. This is, apologies in general, but I guess I get disappointed, like even the other ones like Dinesh D'Souza. I've watched a lot of times when he talks to the church congregations, and he results to ad hominems. These people are supposed to be, holding Christian individuals, and they're talking about these atheists or new atheists, as like he described Christopher Hitchens, tousled hair, wearing a trench coat like a child molester, but still looks really cool,
Which is funny
like
coming from the Christian side.
Yeah, and it just, I find it, sad that honestly, I don't think it's necessary, no matter what. I think apologetics, in a sense, I don't know if it's really making a difference, except if it's just preaching to the choir.
I think it's big money. I mean, I think the back and forth between them, because like I said, I love Hitchens. Dawkins, I like a lot of what he has to say, but I do think that he goes a bit overboard sometimes. I mean, bottom line, people on both sides are just people. Neither one of them, neither side has, any individual specific advantages. So I think there's like, people go above and beyond as far as the cruelty goes and the meanness and the comments and the criticism on both sides. But I do agree that, you've got to have a core argument still. And I think on the atheist side with these folks, they have core arguments. They're bringing it to the Christians or to the believers. And if the only response you can get back is a few insults and, quotes from the Bible, and basically it comes down to, well, bottom line, it's in the Bible. That's not a response. That's not a retort. That's not an answer. So I think on that side, obviously I would lean towards the atheist, but both sides can be snippy back and forth.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's, I think, more from the apologist side, you would hopefully expect them not to, like when the doors are closed, when they're not debating and they're talking to the congregation they do something that I don't like. You give them a perspective of a person that they never met, and you're already telling how they are, but it's incorrect because I've watched the same debates. I watched them handle it. That's not exactly what they said, Right. That's not, and they're just computing this stuff. And I feel like, are you really doing yourself a service, helping out your community? Or, I don't really see it making a difference besides a monetary thing for them and writing books and all that stuff. But an atheist, when I talk to my friends that are are atheists, it doesn't do anything. It actually makes their non-belief even stronger.
Right.
So I don't know what their real goal is. I think, I don't know if they really think they're making a difference, but I don't think they are.
Well, I got a clip here from a couple of guys that do think they're making a difference, and they have the smoking gun. And I'm sorry, I know we say we try not to make fun of anyone, but I'm the cynical, sarcastic person of the show. So so I think it's easier for me. But Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort, they have the smoking gun here. Let's take a listen.
Hold this, Kirk. Behold the atheist's nightmare. Now, if you study a well-made banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 ridges. On the close side, 2 ridges. If you get your hand ready to grip a banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 grooves, on the close side 2 grooves. The banana and the hand are perfectly made one for the other. You'll find the maker of the banana, Almighty God, has made it with a non-slip surface. It has outward indicators of inward contents: green, too early; yellow, just right; black, too late. Now, if you go to the top of the banana, you'll find, as with the soda can makers, they placed a tab at the top. So God has placed a tab at the top. When you pull the tab, the contents don't squirt in your face. You'll find the wrapper, which is biodegradable, has perforations. Notice how gracefully it sits over the human hand. Notice it has a point at the top for ease of entry. It's just the right shape for the human mouth. It's chewy, easy to digest, and it's even curved toward the face to make the whole process so much easier.
And it's shaped like a penis. Bravo.
Sorry about the audio quality. It wasn't the best audio quality. It's YouTube, but sorry.
Was he being serious? I mean, I've seen the two of them do arguments before and give different examples. I've never seen the banana expose.
I've never seen this in context. I've only seen this clip because it just gets thrown around the web so much. And I don't know. Like, you can kind of see Kirk Cameron next to him kind of giggling a little bit. So it's almost like, is he? No,
because he's thinking penis.
I mean, but if you see any of other Ray Comfort shows, he has one about, I forget what they call it. Have you seen this, Joey, where they have like a half duck, half something?
Oh, yeah. Why evolution is not right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I don't know, but I feel like just seeing Ray Comfort stuff before, he is serious, but,
no, he was, anyway. They corrected him. He's been known as the banana man. With today's, bananas that we have in the stores, how incorrect his thought on it, because they're genetically enhanced and processed. The ones that you get in nature are not the ones we get. They've gone through a process. So his analogy there is kind of false.
Anyway, so that was kind of a fun one. I do have one more clip, and this guy's not on your list, but I actually really like what he had to say. This is Harvey Cox, and he's a professor at the Harvard Divinity School, and he had this to say about, when asked about kind of his thoughts on atheism.
Sam Harris thinks otherwise.
That's the wrong one. Sorry about that, guys. Here we go.
It always makes a comeback, I think, when religious people get too arrogant. When they begin to look as though or speak as though they know it all, when they begin to impose themselves in ways that are unwelcome to other people in the society, then atheism is a kind of for me, a welcome critique of this arrogance.
So, I mean, I like how he talks about it. It's like a welcome critique, and it is kind of. I feel like, the far right, like the GOP or whatever, like they're making a strong case. They're making an atheist job easy. You know what I mean?
To his point too, because if you look at when these three authors started putting their books out, it was in the middle towards the end of Bush's, reign as president.
Right.
And, he was, worse than anybody as far as bringing, the God equation into politics, where it really has no realm. Cause I think the bottom line for me is, you can go back and forth with somebody as far as, the argument for and against, believing, the evolution thing. They can argue against evolution, which is fine, but even if evolution wasn't true, it doesn't automatically make it true that, a man with a white beard in the sky created everything. So I think that the whole point of their argument is false in the first place, because they're not really presenting, other options or other thoughts, they're saying, well, here's an argument why this doesn't work, so therefore it's God. But I think if you leave all that aside, if you leave all the squabbling, if you leave all the, I've got proof here, don't have proof here, leave all that aside, the bottom line it comes down to is that in an ideal situation, you should be able to coexist, obviously, with your different beliefs. But the reason why people like Hitchens and others had to become so aggressive over it is because it became impossible to strictly coexist. Because again, just, in God trust on my dollar bill is one thing, but pushing through laws based on religious beliefs is another. Having churches, be allowed to fund, the Mormon Church in Utah pumped millions and millions of dollars into the gay marriage amendment in California a few years ago and defeated it. One, they're in a completely different state, but two, this is a church who, because of their beliefs, is fighting against something that they don't agree with. So it's not individuals, it's a church, it's a religious belief that's causing these things and taking away potential rights, regardless of which side you fall on, from, other people in the society. Even though, in that particular case, it would have no bearing, on the Mormon. It wouldn't, so two gays getting married has no effect on the Mormon church in the slightest, but they still fought it because of their beliefs. And I think that's the core. So that's where Hitchens, I think, again, even though he can be aggressive, I think that's where he's right to say that these people with their goofy beliefs are affecting and are forcing and are changing our lives because of what they believe. And that's the line that shouldn't be crossed. The extreme, obviously, is the Muslim terrorists and the bombs and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, the Christians, for the most part, don't do that, but they're still ruining lives and damaging lives through laws and through oppression and through hatred and through preaching racism and homophobia and all kinds of other things. And that is the key issue, which is where I would agree with Hitchens that I don't think it'd be a bad thing if we kind of laughed in the face of these people and said, great, you believe what you want to believe, but there's no reason why I should know about it or why I should be affected by it. Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why the past few years, why I started kind of moving away from, that's why I started questioning things, was because I'm very much for, people's rights and individuals' rights. And whenever I would post anything on Facebook, like supporting gay rights, like all my evangelical quote unquote friends that I've had throughout the years just, they just bombarded me with, just going against. It's weird because you say hey, this person has a right to do what they want, to live their life in peace, and then to have people object to that statement, like a simple statement, was really crazy. And I had people sending me personal messages on Facebook, are you okay? I think we need to talk because you're giving sin a pass and all this kind of stuff. And to me, it just got so exhausting that I was like, this can't be, this can't be, I don't know. It just wasn't for me. You know what I mean? So that's the reason why I started kind of breaking away. And, it's just weird, people ask me, well, what are you? I'm well, I go to church every now and then. I do the worship music and stuff like that. I have friends there. I do it's the one chance, since I have, 3 kids now, it's my one chance I can see certain people, friends with the worship leader in our church, really kind of laid back guy. And, but as far as calling myself a Christian, I can't, because I don't feel I have all the answers to call myself a Christian. But then again, I feel like I can't call myself an agnostic either, because agnostic is also as bad as atheist, certain circles, so it's kind of a catch-22. So, I always,
go ahead.
I always just tell people I believe there's something else bigger than us. I'm not sure what it is. So that's pretty much right where I
was going to ask that. I'm kind of curious about that because I don't see how anybody, no, they're two separate things, but for me, from my perspective, I don't see how anybody who gives it time and gives it rational thought, and gives it serious effort can, one, accept, on the one hand, the church, the organized beliefs, when you do have all this, negativity that comes out of them, as far as affecting other people and, oppressing other people. And on the other hand, how does that same rational person who's given it thought still say, well, yes, I do believe that there was, a man in a boat and he floated above a flood that covered the world and, blah, 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 all sorts of stuff about the God and about the God created us, with a purpose, and he's watching over us and he's everywhere like Santa Claus. And I see that the way you're talking and what you're saying, I kind of see how you moved away from the first half, which makes sense, because these aren't groups that I think are Like I wouldn't be proud to be a member of a group,
right?
Regardless of the point of it, that supported those kind of things. But I'm curious how it plays into the other half, as far as your belief. And I know you say you're agnostic as far as looking and stuff, but how it plays into the actual, forget the effect on people, but the facts of the matter, as far as is there something out there? Did someone create us? Is there a heaven? That kind of stuff.
Well, for me, I mean, and I've said this before in past shows. I mean, as far as like the quote unquote biblical history, all these stories, I don't know, and I feel like they're kind of myth, oral myth that's been kind of finally written down. And there's like each story has some sort of a point to it, like a moral to it. But as far as like something being bigger than me, I mean, having like, I think just, I just had a baby. He's 4 months old now, and it's just kind of seeing like a baby being born and just how life is created, yeah, there's scientific ways to explain it, but just kind of seeing the intricacies of like a newborn baby, and just I don't know, it's hard to explain to people who don't have kids, and but just kind of going through that process 3 times kind of showed me like, and we don't know it all, but I feel like there's got to be something bigger than us that we don't understand, just because how humans are kind of, on this earth, like as like kind of top of the food chain kind of thing. Like we're really the only species on this planet that kind of creates and builds and invents and I'm sure there's scientific ways to explain all that, but I don't know. That's kind of how I explain it. I'm not very good at explaining it. I
understand it, but to the point of the people, though, I mean, we weren't always the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
We weren't always building things, and we, it went through the survival of the fittest, for a long time before obviously we started inventing and, putting things together and putting pieces together and building, homes and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, to me, it's an interesting discussion that I'm totally welcome from any side. And I think I kind of feel like there's certain things that are more important in life than kind of worrying about trying to figure everything out. So, I'm okay right now personally with just, looking at the Bible as stories, most of them stories. Who knows if it's history or not, but there's certain things you can take negative things from the Bible, you can take positive things from the Bible. And, that's the strange part of that book.
Well, it's like Aesop's fables. I mean, there's a morality you can find in there, a lesson. Right. But it doesn't mean that the players or the authors are telling truths.
Yeah. What do you think, Joey? Where are you at with this?
It's an interesting discussion because, what I don't really have a problem with, the Bible per se, in many aspects, because I've been, for the last 2 years, I've been studying, actually rebooting how I see the Bible, and maybe trying to understand it in the light of its context, historically, and understanding that the Bible itself is not one book, and what were the authors were trying to say. And what through the 2 years that I've been studying historically, I had to be honest with myself. I had bad theology, and I think with anyone, I encourage anyone that really cares and wants to study the Bible to really take on those hard questions, and take on, history and try to figure it out, and who Jesus was, what was his real message, not what the modern church tells you it is, what in context was, supposedly Jesus, if you do believe that he is this, what was his message, and I've come to the understanding that I do believe that Jesus did exist. I believe that he was an apocalyptic prophet, part of a very moving apocalyptic sect of Judaism, in First Judea, and I really think that he believed that God was going to intervene very soon and take over the forces of evil. And the way I look at it now is that, and of course within their generation, they're with these other disciples and whatnot before, they wouldn't see death before the coming of God. So I think, of course, that didn't happen. And so I think Christianity itself spurred off that as cognitive dissonance of, well, maybe we misunderstood what Jesus was trying to say. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how if you see the evolution of Christianity as a belief system, and how if you really study early on Christianity, how many different ideas, you got the Gnostics and you got all these different ideas of who Jesus was actually. Was he human? Was he just pure God? Was he, what is that? And I find that fascinating. And I find that, unfortunately, I don't think most of the modern church doesn't talk about that stuff. And I think it's a disservice. And honestly, a lot of these people that are leading the churches learn this stuff in seminary, but they don't bring it up to their congregation for many reasons that we can speculate. But to go back to your real question, I think where I'm at is I think I've always had the problem with the theodicy. And I'm not sure if you guys understand what theodicy is. It's the idea, the philosophical point of you have a all-loving, all-powerful God, and there's evil in the world. There's suffering. But at the end of the day, I don't think anyone knows. And if you claim that you do know, it's just arrogance. And I think it doesn't add to the conversation. I think we're all should be open. And, I'm open to the evidence. Then be open to the evidence. But if they're not there, then don't believe, or change your theology, so.
I would think, though, that just to your last point right there, I think there is plenty of room for arrogance. Obviously, a lot of people are arrogant, but I don't agree that to claim, and because again, I think that what I know and what I believe have got to be the same thing. I mean, they've got to be synonymous because that's the point of belief. And if I don't believe in God or anything that comes with it, then I know it's not the case. I mean, I know it's the case. I know that those things don't exist. And I don't think it's arrogance to say so. I think that, I can sit here and I can be completely open. I mean, I can say I believe this, and down the road, if something does come along and change my mind, then I'll say I can revise it. I think there's nothing wrong with somebody who changes their view on something. But until that time comes, I've got zero reason to expect that, to use your point earlier, that a unicorn, will come, flying in from the sky. So I think that I'm within my rights to say, I know that unicorns do not exist, or I know that Pegasus does not exist. You know what I mean? And so I don't think there's anything necessarily arrogant or wrong with saying that, because there are certain things that are, not the case. They're just not true. They're not going to be true. And, I think that I would err more on common sense, than worry about, crossing the line into arrogance, or worry about crossing the line into, well, I'm only human. I don't know everything, which is true. I don't know everything. Right. But I do know that the unicorn's not going to come into my living room.
Right. And I guess I would have to maybe rephrase what I was trying to say. I do not disagree with what you're saying at all. I think the word arrogance, maybe I've used that too loosely, and maybe taking it on saying you're being arrogant by thinking that. I think it's more the possibilities of, like, maybe you could say you don't believe in a personal God or a God exists at all. But even like the Lawrence Krauss, he says, who knows? There could be, a God out there, or whatever we want to call this thing, a God that created everything and did all this stuff. But as a scientist, there's no evidence pointing, hey, this is the attributes, this is the person, or what being did this. And I take that, I understand. I've studied this a lot, and like I said, my personal view, I take more the theodicy of it, of the personal God. To say that there's something greater, like Sean says out there, I don't know, and neither does anyone else, but I don't really think we can sit all day and make conjectures about it, it doesn't matter. It's not going to make a difference if you say, I believe it. No, I don't. Well, that's cool, but, I think what I battle with and what I'm against is fundamentalism. I think, right. Like the Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins, I don't think they're really going after the cultural Christians or the Sunday Christian that goes and then goes home and watches football and does whatever he wants all week and then just shows up on Sunday. I think he's really going to the people that you want to restrict education, want to teach like creationism in schools, want to stop certain laws based on their theological belief systems of, like gay marriage or abortion rights or equal rights, even that to that degree. So I do agree with you, Rob. I apologize. Maybe I should have rephrased that in a better way. So I didn't mean it that way.
No apology necessary.
Well, let's take another musical break here, and we'll come back and wrap up the show. We'll wrap it up and see where we're at, see what we accomplished on the show here. But first, from St. Clair Shores, Michigan, this band is called Undesirable People, and the song I'm gonna play for you right now is called Eugenics from the album Eugenics. It's out now. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to the AxPx podcast. That was Undesirable People with the song Eugenics from the album of the same name. It's out now. Go to undesirablepeople.bandcamp.com and check out if you like that song. Alright guys, we gotta wrap up soon, and I kinda wanna see where we're at after this discussion. I mean, to me, I feel like personally both sides of these discussions, like where you have the new atheists over here trying to propagate their non-belief, right? And then you have the fundamental apologists over here trying to combat what the atheists are saying. Kind of going back and forth. And I feel like personally it doesn't really accomplish a whole lot, as far as the conversation goes. Do you guys think the conversation should be approached from a different level? Do you think the conversation is even relevant in this day and age? Like, what do you guys think? Because I feel like they're both approaching it wrong. Do you guys think there's a better way to approach this conversation, or should it even be approached?
I think that I'll jump first. Sorry, Joey.
No, you're fine. No, I will go for it.
I do think that for the most part, both sides preach to the choir, and so in that sense, what is it really accomplishing? But beyond that, I mean, the argument has to be said. So the fact that on the non-faith side, because if you go back before the past decade, you're not really going to find books, let alone bestsellers, arguing that side of things, arguing the non-belief side of things. And so I think it's good to get that kind of stuff out there, because even if nothing else, it gets the conversation going, it gets the thoughts going. And so if you've got somebody who is a believer, who maybe, found time to have a little bit of doubt, wants to do a little bit of research on it, whatever, and come to a conclusion. And, and if they do all that and they come back to God, well, they're a bit of I don't want to be insulting, then that's fine. But, at least they have the option to do so. And the fact that there are these books up there, that these people that, these authors who are high profile, who get themselves on shows and on talk shows and like that. So there's more of an awareness of it. And so people can read up on it, can get different views. And it's not just about, like we were saying, the arguments about, okay, well, the idea that a God created this is silly because we have this science here, or vice versa. It's not just about that. It's about the effect that the faith and that the belief has on humanity in general. Because nobody should care what the individuals think. But everybody should care, what's being forced down somebody else's throat and forced into their homes.
Right. What's affecting public policy in any country you're in.
Exactly.
Joey, how about you, man?
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think it's here to stay, and the one thing we didn't bring up in this, which we, now I kind of regret, but the power of the internet, of this new atheism. I think it's here to stay. I forget who did you showcase? Was it a priest or something talking about he welcomed these waves of atheism coming at him?
Harvey Cox. He's from the Harvard Divinity School, so it's kind of more of a secular approach towards religion anyway. But
right, and I mean he brings that point, but I don't think this is a wave that's going away anytime soon. I think because of the internet, because of the information, just think about it 10 years ago, even 10, 15 years ago, where would you even think about listening to scholars or even people to debate on this? You would end up having to go onto a college website and spend $30, $40 for the VHS tape for it, to see that, and even where did you get this idea, to do that? And I think technology and, individualism on the internet with YouTube and whatnot, I think it's going to strive this new atheist movement, which should be interesting social wise, because I don't know, I see a lot of interesting things, even with the current election with Mitt Romney. I found it very fascinating that his religion wasn't brought up that much, and me myself, with questioning a lot of stuff, I found it kind of scary in a sense. Not that I'm a fearmonger on this, but that I've saw some recent discussions with him about his religion, and for someone that really truly believes in this apocalyptic imagery that a war must happen in the Middle East, so the second coming of Jesus, I don't want a guy that has keys to the nukes, or anything like that.
Everybody should go back and read or watch The Dead Zone, see what happens.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't share that belief anymore. I don't believe that the book of Revelation is for a modern sense of interpretation, so I can't share those apocalyptic visions of that, this world is going to come to an end with this cat. It probably is, but probably for the wrong reasons, Yeah,
it's because people aren't wanting to care for our planet or like that. Because, man, we're going to open up a can of worms here.
I know. I apologize.
No, but just there seems to be in the fundamentalist Christian, like, just, they don't care, and they think that global warming and stuff like that is kind of a hoax or whatever. And they go, well, and I even talked to my wife about this, and, she's kind of, well, it doesn't, none of this really matters. The election doesn't matter because, Jesus is going to come back someday anyway or whatever. And it's like, I'm like, no, that's just the wrong attitude to have, because we need to take care of what we got right now. Even if, Jesus is coming back or whatever, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to take care of the planet. Why you wouldn't want to like recycle or, or whatever. Just, there seems to be a level of just, I don't know. I can't think of the word right now. They just don't.
Well, it's not forward thinking. And to what I said earlier, I mean, even if you believe that something else is coming afterwards, by no way, shape, or form should you devalue or lessen the value of this current existence.
Yeah, exactly.
And even if it's not for you, I mean, what about your kids? When you die and you're in heaven and you're celebrating, your kids are going to be here for another 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And then their kids, and then their kids. Why, even if you believe in the afterlife, why would you not want to leave this place as pristine? Treat it like a national or a beach or a national forest. I mean, you leave what you came in with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just treat it like and leave it as beautiful and as pristine as you can and as good. I mean, to use like just a generic term, as good as you can. Because even if you're off happy someplace else, there are people that you love and care about who are still here on this planet.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, Joey, we'll have to make a note. We'll have to talk about environmentalism in an upcoming show. Definitely.
For sure.
We can talk about that.
You're going to have to bring me back for that one or the sin one. I'm happy to do that.
Sure. Yeah, man, we will.
Well, it'd be interesting, man. In the first quarter, I'm actually planning on going to, at ASU here in Arizona. They're having a debate on, what is it called? Climate, debate on climate change. And it's brought to you by Lawrence Krauss again. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Where in Arizona are you?
Phoenix.
Oh, I'm in Mesa.
Well, man, we might have to change numbers and get some lunch.
Excellent.
All right, guys.
Say, as far as that environmentalism, I'm also a vegetarian, so we can bring that into it as well.
There you go. Well, there's just so much to talk about with this stuff. And I feel like at the end of each show, I always feel like we barely scratch the surface of anything. But we gotta wrap up here. For this,
can I say one last thing?
Sure, man, go for it.
Highly recommended if you guys haven't read it, or any listeners. Christopher Moore's novel Lamb.
Okay.
The Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Pale, is it's a very funny book, but beyond that, Moore knows what he's talking about. It's a very serious book as well, and it got a lot of emotion to it, a lot of heartfelt views towards religion and faith, in the process of being a very like laugh out loud, crying, very funny book.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. As always, Rob Hunter, thank you so much for chatting with us about this.
Oh, definitely.
It's always fun to get fresh perspectives and different perspectives in each conversation. Cause otherwise it'll be just me and Joey kind of going back and forth agreeing with each other.
Well, I'm happy to say you're both wrong.
And you can find, Rob, where can people find you on Twitter? They read your
Twitter, it's fake Rob Hunter.
Awesome.
It was funny once upon a time. And then obviously I'm with filmschoolrejects.com.
Very cool. You can find me, I'm on Twitter. Find me as the AxPx. You can also find on Facebook, Facebook page, facebook.com/theAxPx. I would love to have you guys, like that page and throw in your 2 cents. And Joey, where can everyone find you on the internets?
Twitter, Joey Avalos, my name, and, Yeah, that's probably it.
Awesome. And, Joey, I'm going to have to actually make you open up the AxPx page so you can start sending people there too. All right. And
Sounds
contributing.
good.
Thanks so much, guys, for chatting about the subject. If you have, if you're listening and you want to, chime in, you can drop me a line, Sean at the AxPx. Also, drop me an email if you want. But, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, we'll be talking to, we'll do the Mormon episode, that we were planning on doing this week. And that should be a very good discussion, as well, since,
who doesn't love magic underwear?
We'll be talking about that for sure.
We'll be talking about it. So join us next week. And as always, have a great week, and we'll talk to all of you guys very soon. Bye.